Hello and welcome back to this review roundtable for Saros, the latest game from Housemarque, which releases on the PlayStation 5 next week. I'm joined by Bane of Push Square. I'm Jordan Midler from VGC. We have both completed Saros. We've seen all there is to see, and we're going to give you our thoughts about the game. No spoilers. Now, in a break from tradition, Sony's embargo on this game is actually incredibly loose. The things that we are not actually allowed to talk about is very, very small, and we are allowed to talk about stuff that I would honestly consider spoilers, Aaron. So I think we'll put an extra blanket of protection over this to not spoil the biggest and best moments.
Yeah, for sure. I was a little surprised by that myself.
Yes, to go behind the curtain very slightly, typically for games of this size, we have strict restrictions to the point where there will be a screenshot of like, do not even mention that the game exists beyond this screenshot, whereas this was very much up to your interpretation. But enough of all of that. Aaron, give me your elevator thoughts on Saros.
I came into Saros a little apprehensive because I love Returnal so much, and everything I'd seen about it before release just looked kind of samey, and I was a little worried that would be the case with this. But having now played the game to completion, it was a game that as I got deeper into it, the more I played, the more I loved it. I think there's still things that I prefer about Returnal, mainly like the atmosphere, maybe the story, but I think what they've done with the gameplay here is really like they've kind of taken what worked with Returnal, streamlined it in places, expanded it in others. And I think when you're locked in with this game, I mean, you don't get a shooter like this where you're hitting such a flow state and it just feels so good. So I absolutely love the game from a gameplay standpoint. And it also just, I mean, it looks great. And they're still holding on to that kind of Housemarque weirdness, which I'm glad of, because everything was kind of saying that, like, right, Returnal was maybe a wee bit too weird, a wee bit too niche. How do we make that more of a mass appeal thing? And I think they've really found that balance quite well, where it's not going to annoy anyone that was like a big fan of Returnal, but it's maybe slightly more forgiving and a wee bit more inviting to those that struggled with Returnal as well.
Having played the first two biomes in Finland at Housemarque, I had kind of alleviated myself of similar concerns where so I knew the game was happening. I didn't really know all that much about it, but when it got announced, I was like, okay, good. We're sticking in the same kind of ballpark as Returnal. It wasn't Returnal as I'd hoped, a sequel to Returnal, but we'll see. It's a spiritual sequel in some ways. I think that I also worried that, are they going to listen to the wrong people? Are they going to dumb it down? Are they going to make it a mainstream third-person shooter that just happens to have really good gameplay? And they've not done that. It is still very firmly a Housemarque game. I feel that the things that they have left behind in Returnal, I'm pretty much on board with all of them. I think there will be some players that when they get to the end of the game, the sense of accomplishment is maybe somewhat lessened because it's not as absolutely brutal, and there is actually a power ramp towards the end of the game, whereas Returnal, outside of like getting the melee and like things that made it a bit easier to get around, like you always felt so incredibly weak and incredibly small. And I know that that's actually, without getting into super detail, the idea of getting more powerful in Saros makes sense from a narrative perspective in the same way that Celine being so isolated and so weak made sense from a Returnal perspective. So I'm totally with that. I just think that would be something that players might raise. But in terms of, I think the gameplay is pretty much sublime. I can't think of anything that touches it in terms of this kind of third-person gameplay. It is so tight. It is so it feels so good to play. Like just playing the game feel is incredible, and I think that can't be overstated enough. I think it's, from an art perspective, it's stunning. I understand that as you said about the atmosphere in Returnal was incredibly unique, but I think that the first area of Returnal, the crash area and the first zone, I think is so perfectly realized. I think later areas in Returnal lose a bit of that, whereas I think the consistency in Saros, I think, is much stronger. I think the levels they go to and the literal levels they go to, where they're surprising you with things, I think is pretty immense. But by the way, we will be comparing this a lot to Returnal because it's natural to do so. But I just think it's fantastic, and I think we'll kick off there. So gameplay, it's a third-person roguelite. So you're going on runs into this world. Each of the world has a I'm not going to say how many biomes, but it has a set amount of biomes, and each biome has a boss. The idea being that in the biome, you defeat enemies, you pick up randomized weapons, randomized stat upgrades, things like that, and you try and take down the boss. The enemies are difficult, but for me, unlike in Returnal, where you always felt incredibly defensive, you felt weak, you were trying to evade things, it behooved you to be out of the action. In Saros, I was always front foot. I was being incredibly aggressive. I was like basically the Doomslayer. What was your kind of approach to the gameplay for Saros?
Yeah, for sure. It was the same kind of approach, especially like I think it does a smart job of like introducing you to little skills. I say little skills that completely change the combat the further you go into it. It does have that thing of like kind of like Returnal did, where you'll see a some kind of door or some kind of thing, you're like, I can't do that. That's going to be something, but I can't use it yet. And I think as they were introduced, it didn't feel like some sort of gimmicky thing. It was like, no, this is actually something that completely changes how I'm going to go in the offensive. And like you're saying, much more aggressive in that way. And once you get into, I think it does a smart job of like ramping up the enemies, like how many enemies and like how dangerous they can be and how they can be dangerous as well with the different kinds of projectiles and stuff. And it got to the point that there were some enemies that were just, they were really, really difficult. It was almost like they didn't give you a second to like just bombard them with your really strong weapon or your abilities. It was like, right, you're going to have to be on top of your movement. Traversal is really cool here as well. And you're utilizing, I think, what is the kind of star of the show compared to Returnal was the shields mechanic in this, where you like hold R1 to open this blue shield, and that can absorb blue projectiles, which then powers your power weapon. So like you're constantly kind of going between either dodging it, absorbing them, using the power weapon to take some like big amounts of health off of the enemies, and then charging up again. And it added like another element to it over Returnal's gameplay for me, where it wasn't just I'm avoiding stuff and I'm shooting stuff. I'm also trying to think tactically of like, right, okay, which of these will I then, absorb? Which of these will I parry? And it come the end of it, when I was getting into the really difficult stuff at the tail end of this game, I think I text you as well. We were saying like, I don't think I've had like such a high in some of the combat scenarios in this as I've had with any other game. It's just like sublime. And then when you get into some of the bosses as well, I mean, there was one boss later on in the game that I had been kind of struggling with, and I remember I was down to like such a small amount of health, but it was just that, right, you need to lock in your dodge and your parrying, your shooting, you're using your power weapon, blah blah blah. And when I finished it, I remember I could feel my heart was like pounding, and I was like, this is what it's about, man.
It had that kind of, to me, it evokes the Souls games a lot, in my opinion, in terms of the kind of the boss energy, in terms of the boss is getting low, but you're getting low, and you start saying to yourself like, I'm going to choke this. I can feel a choke coming, and you start like your hands lock up, and you're like, I can't do anything about this. But I think that the thing that it does really well is these smaller enemies in the biome on your run to the boss are mini tutorials for that boss. They're very consistent about doing that. Like, you will be given a weapon or you will be given an ability that it's like, learn this, master this in this biome, and this boss, you'll take it in 2 seconds. There's only one exception to that, and I think it's the boss that we both got stuck on for a little while, which is more spectacle. Like, it is this big spectacle moment, which is still cool, but it's like it's faced in a pretty different way. But a lot of the time, much like how some of the best Souls bosses are like you versus another guy with a sword, another human with a sword. It's like, this is a mechanics battle. This isn't something you can cheese. The best parts of Saros are when it's like, okay, they later introduce red bullets which you can parry. So it's like, okay, I'm a parrying, I'm a dodging, I'm a absorbing. There's always something going on. Like, it's like another layer to that. And they time that well with, you get to a point where you'll unlock certain weapons that take care of a lot of enemies at once. Like, there's a crossbow, and one of the variations of the crossbow, it has like seeking arrows, and it can, if it hits an enemy, it'll split off into another seeking arrow. So the gunplay gets easier, and then it's like, okay, you've clearly nailed the gunplay. Let's give you a movement challenge. Let's give you like a dodging challenge, something like that. And I think all of that stuff's really, really smart. In terms of like the weapons, I think they're introduced at a smart enough clip. I think there's about from what I can tell, there is between the power weapons and the normal weapons, there is about 20 variations. That will be like 2 kinds of shotgun, 2 kinds of rifle, etc., and so on. So you definitely develop your favorites. But one of the best things this game does is there is no weapon that I picked up and went, well, I can't actually do anything like this. It changes my idea, like it changes the idea of what the run is going to be, in my opinion. But there's no absolute duds, which I think is pretty strong.
Yeah, because like Returnal, I always the dreaded Rotland Lobber, I think it was called, and I hated that weapon so much in Returnal. And then there was another like electric pylon one, which I
loved the electric pylon, the one that you shot like the red cables. I loved that one.
I couldn't get on board with that one for some reason, and I did feel like there wasn't a gun in this that I was like, when I picked it up, this is just not, because every one of them had their strengths and weaknesses, and they were all kind of fun to play in their own way. I was a little, when I first started the game, because I came in with that apprehension, and it has this, like, a lot of the guns have an auto mark feature, which initially I was like, I don't know about this, because it's just kind of like, I feel like I'm just holding the trigger, and like it's kind of doing it for me. But like we're saying with like how it kind of goes a little further into it and introduces these new mechanics. What I like about it is, like, because a lot of the shooters and stuff, it like you go into Destiny, and your most basic Destiny kind of raid or like boss to fight, you kind of feel like you're just shooting and like waiting for that health bar to tick down. But the best parts of like Destiny and Saros is like when that becomes like a part of the fight. And like we're saying in here, it's this bullet ballet that they talk about. It is actually very much like kind of alive with this, where it's like you're not just shooting enemies and watching health bars tick down. You're just got so many other aspects to the gameplay that you're thinking about as you dive about. And it makes it feels so good in a way as well, where like it's a little complicated to start as they start introducing them. But when you really get into the flow of things, I don't think the way that they've locked in this gameplay is so impressive to me. I do kind of agree with what you're saying though about like the structure. I think for some people it's not as hard, I don't think, as Returnal. I think
it's not.
But it's kind of like the structure was the hard part of Returnal. Like most of the bosses in Returnal I beat first time, but it's the fact that you had to go all the way up to the first boss. Right now you're beating through the entire second one to get to the second boss, and the whole kind of structure of that was you had to basically make it all the way from the beginning all the way to the end. And we would have been playing this as well before they added the pause in the cycle thing. So like if you quit the game or something, like, right, well, you're starting from scratch, and you're talking like 3-hour runs. That's just not the case here.
They had the little bits in Returnal where like once you got to like the 6th zone, you could cut through the first one to the 4th one and give you that item to like, that almost felt like a concession of, okay, like we'll let you do this now. Whereas in this game, straight warping to every single one of the biomes.
Yeah, it's like you finish that one, you're pretty much told go back to the base, level up, and then go out again, like and teleport to that second one, fight through that one, go back again, teleport to the third. So it is like a lot easier like that. Most of your runs are going like 30 minutes, I found. It was like the kind of average. And you can, like, there is an option, like after I'd kind of gotten to the last zone, to start from the scratch and just go all the way through it. And that on its own, like, I think that run for me was like 2.5 hours, and it was a lot of fun. And like, I felt like an absolute tank at the end of it. But yeah, just on that before you proceed, that specific thing of doing all of them, I sent you a screenshot of mine as well. Like, that's not only a great way to get Lucenite, which is the upgrade, one of the upgrade materials, as well as Halcyon, which is a more rare kind of upgrade material. But in doing that, you are essentially, that feels like a concession of, okay, we've given you much more ways to be stronger, but here's another way. If you want to like charge yourself up all the way and then hit the wall that you're already on, you're gonna get yourself to a much higher kind of run level and make yourself even stronger. So I think that the options they give you, like, they've made a game that is far easier and far more accessible without like compromising the vision for people who want it to be super tough, which I think is like the smartest thing they could possibly have done with it. And that as well, I suppose kind of brings us on to the modifiers. They're like one of the big kind of features here where you can you can give yourself basically buffs and nerfs, and there's like a kind of balance in the scale where you like, if you make it easier for yourself, you have to make it harder in some ways. And I actually never touched this, like personally, just because I felt like what I was getting was like the experience that they intended, and the other, like, I suppose it's like a nice thing if someone is struggling with it, but there wasn't an incentive there, really. There's not like a reason to make it harder or easier for yourself. It's just entirely down to personal preference. I wouldn't even say that you're not like, you're not getting less resources or anything just because you're making it easier for yourself.
You aren't getting less, but there are ones to get more leucine, and I definitely I did mess about with that. So the Carcosan modifiers, I think they need very slightly tweaked, because I did find a way to make a build that was like ridiculously easy, and maybe that's it working as intended, like, because some of the nerfs will be like, oh, you can't get Halcyon this run, which is one of the upgrade materials, but and that takes, it's like it's a meter. If you imagine there's like a meter in the middle, and you get plus or minus points depending on what buff or nerf you use, and they have to be balanced in some way, so you can't be too overpowered or too underpowered. And the one to have no Halcyon was taking me so far into like the underpowered realm that it was like, I can add on way more damage, way more health, and still be balanced. And to me, that wasn't quite balanced. So I think that needs tweaked very slightly. But I enjoyed messing about with them. I think they could have went a bit further with it. And I agree. I feel like there should be some kind of like crazy Lucenite modifier if you do a run where you have like 5 of the negative ones or something like that. I think that's something they could get into. Like the PlayStation first party games seem to like doing the not quite a DLC, but here's like a big content update kind of thing. I could see them doing something like that. But I agree, it's a system that is some people will find helpful. It's like I think a lot of people who are just like, okay, this is still a bit too much for me, can stick on the health and the damage one or whatever, and they can mess about with that stuff. But the one that I really liked was, like in Returnal, you can pick up artifacts which have like a positive and a negative. So it'll be like, okay, you get +5 health, but you take fall damage now. Yeah. One of the Carcosan modifiers I used from the second I unlocked it was there's no negative effects on any artifact. So I could just pick up unlimited positive artifacts, and it made me so jacked, and it barely took anything away from my positive negative thing. So it's worth experimenting with.
Another element though to those artifacts as well is you have this eclipse mechanic where like it's a normal non-eclipse version of the map, which is slightly easier basically, and any artifact you pick up will only have positive modifiers. And then when you activate the eclipse, sometimes that is because, well, you can't go any further. Like there's certain doors that you won't be able to open, and that includes some optional areas. Like you can go the non-eclipse version, and right, there's a door that might have upgrade materials in there, but you can't get it unless you activate the eclipse. And when you do, that is like the enemies are more difficult, and those modifiers are like they have negative attributes as well. Interestingly for me, I didn't really feel, I know we're saying it's like a roguelite, I didn't feel that as much. Like it wasn't like a big build game, I felt. It was more just like you pick a weapon and that's kind of the thing. Certain modifiers could be quite good, but I never found any of them. They were like slight tweaks. They weren't like game changers in a way. And it wasn't like that thing where, oh, right, I found this weapon and this benefits this perk and that buffs this thing over here. And then by the end of it, I'm just like insane on this one aspect because I've kind of made a build towards here from the roguelite aspects. It kind of just felt like, right, you're going through and you're making yourself a little bit more powerful as you go. So it didn't have as much of those roguelike aspects as Returnal did, I think, because that was like I felt a bit more in that region of like you could actually completely destroy yourself because you've just been really unlucky with like the perks and the weapons and all of this, whereas I just didn't really feel like that was the case so much with Saros.
I think there could have been more in that direction. I think they are more referring to the fact that like the permanent upgrade stuff is huge. Like coming back to the passage, and you get so many upgrade materials. Like when you first return to the passage, which will probably happen at the first or second boss, you'll come back and you'll be like, okay, I can make a huge difference here. Now, the upgrades are gated by which of the lords you've defeated, which is smart, so you can't like completely wreck yourself, but very quickly they're like, okay, here's a second life. If you die, you can come back again one time. All that kind of stuff builds and builds and builds. So yeah, I think there could have been like someone in a separate video which will be up on the channel. I'll be answering like fan questions about Saros, and someone asked like, can I do like a minion build where like I have like I focus on like little things that like attack for me or something like that, or can I do a glass cannon where I'm very very weak but I do so much damage? And not really, it's not that kind of game. It's not got that kind of thing going for it. However, there are some elements of that, whereas you can get a weapon that has an ability that will combine well with the kind of the artifacts you're using and stuff like that. Like I had one artifact that was like, okay, I get health every time I kill something, or maybe even every time I hit something. And when I was using one of the weapons that like heat seeks to different enemies, does one hit, finds another, does one hit, I was basically staying invincible doing that stuff. So I agree, there's maybe some more room there, but in terms of the world of Carcosa itself, I think this thing looks absolutely ridiculous. There's one specific bit where you're going to a city, let's say, and you have to cut through like this little gap, and it looks like the middle of a Death Star has been split apart. And I just looked up and I was like, this is the most detailed level of any video game I've ever played in my entire life. Like, it's an absolute joke how ridiculous this game looks.
It reminded me, for second time mentioned Destiny here by surprise, but it reminded me of Destiny. There's like a mission in there where you're like going into the last city and you go through the wall.
Yeah,
it's like an enormous kind of thick thing, and it reminded me of that quite a lot. Yes, some of the environments are like insane looking. I think there were some areas that was a bit like, oh, it's a marsh. You gotta have a video game marsh, I suppose. But there was like a kind of underground area that was entirely like mechanical. And every time I play that, even like now, you know, I'm 25 plus hours in, it still is like so impressive looking to me. It is. I think, like you're saying, like the atmosphere is there in Returnal, but I think as it went on, it started to become like, well, here's the red version, here's the snowy version,
here's the ice, but it's all very disparate.
Whereas this, like, each zone was kind of like its own distinct thing from a design perspective, and also like a story kind of angle as well. And like, what did you think of the story?
I thought it was really strong, and it was something that only really crystallized for me towards the end, where, and we won't be specific, like I think they had to nail the big conclusion here, because it is a mystery story. It is you're picking threads. The setup is that you are part of Echelon 4, which is a crew sent to Carcosa to find Echelon 1, 2, and 3, who were part of this big space conglomerate trying to mine the Lucenite, which is the upgrade material. You get there, you can't find anyone, and obviously everyone who's ever seen science fiction is like, okay, we've got this missing crew on this hostile planet. When I find them, things aren't going to be good. But the way that is actually revealed, and the way it plays with time, and like your perception of what's actually going on, I thought it was very, very Housemarque, very Finnish of them. It's like there was like Remedy elements of this. I was like, oh, this is just Finnish storytelling all over. I thought it was really, really good. I think that and I wrote this in the review before the game came out, and when I spoke to Gregory Loudon, the director, he highlighted the fact that it's like, in Returnal, we basically just had Celine. It was Celine doing a monologue, essentially. Like, it was very hard to make that happen. But in this game, we have like a much bigger crew. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I wish we'd more time with the crew. And you can get more time with the crew if you stay in the base and you talk to them a lot more. But I think more forced time with the crew would have been better. Originally, when I thought, so this game is much longer than either of us thought it was. So originally, when I was like, okay, I'm coming around the bend here, it felt like I had a proportional amount of time with them. But as the game went on another X amount of time, I was like, I feel like I've spent a lot of time just with Arjun. And Raoul Coley's performance is amazing, by the way. Like, that's no bad thing. Spending time with Arjun is great. But there was interesting characters through the voice notes, text notes and stuff that I would have maybe liked to see realized as actual people more. What about you?
I do think the mystery elements, I think it felt like the narrative was a lot more at the forefront, whereas like Returnal was like, right, you've crash landed on a planet, you're trying to escape kind of thing. That was like the overall thing, and you were just generally finding some weird stuff as you went along. But this was a bit more like, okay, what happened to Echelon 3? Find out what happened to them, but what happened to 2? Yeah. And then, you know, you were kind of going back like that. And like you're saying, the way it kind of messes with certain elements of time, and then you're learning things through the environment as well. I found that a lot more, that was quite like intriguing as you were going through it. I do agree that like the characters were cool, and I liked almost like what they were saying. I just didn't like the form of which, well, I wouldn't say I didn't like, that's maybe a bit extreme, but like you come back to the base and there'll be like 3 guys standing there and they've got little text prompts, and you go up to them and they're just kind of waiting for you to speak to them, and they'll say some stuff, and what they're saying is cool, but yeah, like
it should have been forced. I think they could have afforded to force you a couple more times into cutscenes. I know that they are so, and God bless them, like they're so addicted to be like, never stop, go back out. When you're doing your text logs, you're still blasting things, but they could have had a few moments where they're like, okay, the gate is closed for like, watch this 2-minute cutscene, and then you can go back out. You've just had this massive long run.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, because it's an optional thing, a lot of people are going to miss it, because there is that thing of like the high of like combat. Cool, you're dead. Back to the base. Let's get upgraded and let's get back out. Oh, actually, there's 3 guys that want to sit and talk to you for a few minutes, you know. And that element was I wasn't super keen on. I also found it funny, the sort of inconsistency of like, you have NPCs you speak to, there's just gameplay. You then have cinematics that are in engine cinematics. Then you have pre-rendered cinematics that look entirely different.
That stuff looks insane. The pre-rendered stuff is like the most ridiculous things you'll ever see. Like there's one very specific one that I was like, that's the most detailed character model. How much did Raul Coley's hair on this character model cost? Like this is obscene.
Yeah, but I found it almost like harks back to the old like PS3 style. You know, you're playing The Last of Us, and like the cinematics and the gameplay look entirely different from one another. But like, I like the narrative here. I think as well, like if anyone's played Returnal, they'll know that like there's like the kind of the forefront narrative, and then there's like the deeper narrative where it's like, maybe this isn't what it seems, and blah blah blah, and you have to kind of dig into it if you want to know what's what with that. And I think that's here as well with Saros, although a little bit more like, right, you think this is this, but you know, you should probably look into this a little bit more. I think it's a bit more obvious, so they're trying to be like, study this story a bit more, you know. Whereas like Returnal, I think you would be forgiven for completely missing any of it, because like I have a mate that's been on the show as well, David Carcassoli. He done like a really great piece on Returnal, and some of the stuff he was saying about that, I was like, man, that went over my head so much. Like, so I think there will be some fun here. I think I said to you as well, I would tear up an end and explain video on this, I think, because I like narratives like that, you know, where it's like I'm watching it and I'm aware that there's more than there seems to be, and then like having a newfound appreciation of it. And I like the sort of dystopian sci-fi mega corporation stuff. It's very kind of alien, where it's like the mission, you know, we're here to gather Lucenite. None of you matter. This is the priority.
Yeah, it's very like all sci-fi kind of sits at the feet of Alien, and I think they do it well. Like it's like Alien mixed with like H.R. Geiger kind of stuff, like very gothic horror. Like it's very linked in a way that obviously H.R. Geiger and Alien connection is natural, but like in a different sort of way. Which your fella that wrote the Necronomicon, like stuff like that. Like it's very hardcore in that stuff. I think the like palace designs and the allusions to the civilization that came before, which Housemarque love to do, that stuff looks amazing as well. There is one section towards kind of the back half where there is a massive rendering of what you're eventually going to fight, and I just kept looking at it and I was like, man, the detail put into this stuff for a game where so much of the audience is going to absolutely fly past all this stuff, just getting to the gameplay itself. I thought all that stuff was really, really strong. Really strong soundtrack as well is like it's done in layers, so that the more intense the fight goes, the more the drone metal like comes over the top of you, and it's like it's very ominous, it's very like suffocating, and I thought that stuff was handled like extremely well. But I knew it was going to be like, you come off the back of Returnal and there's some stuff that they're just going to nail, like visuals, tone, like music, like all that kind of stuff, the neon lights of all the attacks. I think the thing that really sells it to me is this was clearly in the same way that Returnal was then breaking the shackles of their like arcade era, and they're like, okay, we're going to do our first big like third person AAA game. This feels like a natural evolution to that, and this feels like they're kind of like stepping out party. Like for me, this kind of has to be the one where they're like, okay, we are a big established studio, we can put out these big games, and I really hope it hits for them, because I think that people who bounced off Returnal will have more time here.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot more potential. Like I was saying, with the narrative being a bit more at the forefront, that's going to bring people in. With the format as well, it's a very easy game to just like do, I'll just quickly do a run, because it's only ever going to be, unless you go for the long one, it's only ever going to be 30, 40 minutes, So it was an easy game when I was playing it, just to go, you know what? I'm on my lunch, I'll just quickly do a wee bit there. I think that's going to help, because before with Returnal, though, you can now have the pause and the cycles. It was like a bit of a like, right, let's sit down and try and get through this kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's a really, really confident release. Like I'm saying, it's like this layered thing where like it starts out, and I wasn't sure to start, just being a huge fan of Returnal, but as I went, and it was like we're saying, we thought it was going to be this, and it was, this. It was much bigger than we expected. The combat just becomes more layered as you go on, and the narrative is unfolds in a really satisfying way. I just had a great time with it. I'm really glad, because I have spent most of this year like, I'm excited for this because I love Returnal and I love some of Housemarque's other games, but I have my worries, I have my reservations, and I'm just glad to see that almost all of that was just completely eradicated for me. Once I'd played a few hours of the game. I think people are really going to love this.
Yeah, they continue to be one of my absolute favourite studios, and I'm very happy that it's turned out this way. Little final things. If you are in one of the earlier biomes and you look and you see some ridiculous like structure or some ridiculous area, you're almost certainly going to go there. Like there's an interconnectivity to the world that is quite impressive. It's not in like and I said this in the review, it's not like you can see this mountain, you're going to go there, like an open world kind of thing. It's more like, what the hell is that? Is that a boss arena? Is that like a biome? Like, what is that? How are we going to get there? And I think the way that it's all connected and has like a universal design language that they have unique areas, but again, it's not like Returnal where it did feel like, okay, we've got like green area, blue area, ice area, fire area. Like, it's much more kind of cohesive in that way. And there's interesting little mechanics like per biome. Like in one of the biomes, you're picking up tokens that you can miss, and if you don't pick them up, you get like a worse reward for that biome. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to do it. And there's like traversal mechanics that don't come into the game until super late. There's a certain type of door that you will see on your first run that you won't be able to open for like 20 hours. Like it grip feeds you that stuff really, really effectively. Any more final thoughts before we head out on Saros? Because I feel like anything more we say might stray into spoiler territory.
Just to talk as well quickly about the performance on both.
Of course.
We were both PS5 Pro, yeah.
Best deal in gaming had to be.
I have played a bit of it on the base PS5, and Stephen, who done the review at Push Square, he's base PS5 as well. And basically, I think it does look better on the Pro. There's slight little environmental details, and maybe they're just like superfluous stuff for a lot of people.
They've said it's higher base rendering. Like that's the main thing you get on PS5 Pro.
So there's like little things here and there. I think the kind of HDR stuff, I think, looks a bit better on the Pro, particularly with the character model. But the performance pretty much hitchless on base PS5 at 60 FPS, and then the Pro, I literally did not even see the slightest stutter. the whole
So
time I was playing.
I had one and I could repeat it multiple times. And weirdly enough, before the patch, this wasn't the case, but it was like, you know, when you drop into the depths and you have like the main hub room before you go off to the side and do the and do the little things to open the gate to Bastion. That room really hitched up for me after the patch. And when I would go into a side room, it was flawless again, and then I would come back and it would do it. So I was like, that's very weird, and it wasn't happening before the patch. So they've been hot fixing this thing as it's been out, as happens with review code. So it's like it's probably something that people in the public build aren't going to see. But yeah, it performs wonderfully, super fast loading, all the PS5 bells and whistles, does cool stuff with the controller.
DualSense is amazing.
Yeah, similar to the Returnal stuff. All that stuff, again, I had no doubt about. I played it on the base PS5 in Finland, and a lot of people on that event were like, was this the pro version, because it looked so good? So I wouldn't worry about that if you're still on the base version. But yes, it's a visual feast. Turn it up. The audio stuff is brilliant. Either turn it up or wear good headphones, because the audio stuff is well worth it. They persist in doing shit with a fucking controller mic, which I really hate, but it's just one of those things. I suppose if they're going to use the DualSense, they have to put little bleeps and bloops coming out of your controller. But other than that, if you'd like to check out my full review of Saros, you can do so over on VGC. And if you're still excited for more Saros content, our video review will be up now. And there's also, from a couple of months ago, my sit-down interviews with Gregory Loudon and Simone Silvestri from Housemarque discussing the game. There's some cool stuff in there too. Aaron, where can people find your stuff?
You can find it on the Push Square YouTube channel, and obviously check out pushsquare.com as well.
Nice, very nice. We will be back with more reviews as the year rolls on. But until next time, check out patreon.com/videogameschronicle if you'd like to support independent games media. Say goodbye, Aaron.
Goodbye.
And we'll see you next time. VGC is supported by Patreon. Check out patreon.com/videogameschronicle for more podcasts, ad-free browsing, and extra content. Thank you for your support.